I remember the silence that fell over the auditorium when Principal Winters folded the paper and slid it back into her jacket pocket. My name should have been on that paper. I knew it. My mother knew it. And judging by the way Mrs. Peterson, the head of the scholarship committee, was shifting uncomfortably in her seat, she knew it too. "And that concludes our awards ceremony," Principal Winters announced with a tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Congratulations to all our recipients." Not once did she mention the Brookhaven Memorial Scholarship, the most prestigious award our school offered, the one I had spent 3 years working toward, the one I had won. I sat frozen in my chair as families began to rise around me, the buzz of conversation swelling like an incoming tide. My palms were sweaty against the speech I'd prepared, now crumpled between my fingers. A speech no one would hear. "Olivia," my mother whispered beside me, her voice low but with an edge I recognized. "Something's not right." I'll never forget that day. Not just because it was the day I learned how invisible I could be made, but because it was the day my mother showed me how to become impossible to ignore. My name is Amara Johnson, and this is the story of how I won a scholarship that almost got erased from history until my mother refused to let that happen. I always loved learning. Even back in elementary school, I'd beg my mother to take me to the library on weekends. While other kids were watching cartoons, I was reading about Marie Curie, or Harriet Tubman, or Katherine Johnson. These women, especially the black women, fascinated me. They had to fight twice as hard to be recognized for their brilliance, and still they persisted. "You've got that same fire," my mother used to tell me, smoothing my hair as I sat cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by books. "Don't you ever let anyone put it out." By the time I reached Jefferson High in our modest suburban neighborhood, I was determined to become valedictorian. Not just for the honor, but because the Brookhaven Memorial Scholarship came with it, a full ride to any state university. For a family like ours, with my father working 2 jobs and my mother taking night classes to finish her nursing degree, that scholarship wasn't just an award. It was the difference between crippling student loans and freedom. "Keep your head down and your grades up," my father advised when I started freshman year. "The world isn't always fair, Amara, but they can't argue with excellence." So that's what I did. While my classmates were going to football games and house parties, I was studying. When the basketball team won the state championship and the entire school got the day off to celebrate, I used those hours to get ahead in calculus. I joined every academic club, entered every competition, and by junior year, I had the highest GPA in my class. But Jefferson High wasn't used to students like me. In its 60-year history, the school had never had a black valedictorian. The walls of the main hallway were lined with framed photographs of past top graduates, an unbroken line of mostly white, mostly affluent faces. Sometimes I'd walk that hallway and imagine my photograph joining them, changing the pattern forever. Principal Winters had been at Jefferson for 20 of those 60 years. She came from old money and older traditions. She was perfectly polite to my face. But I noticed how her smile tightened whenever my mother showed up for conferences in her nursing scrubs, coming straight from her shift. "Mrs. Johnson," she'd say with that brittle smile, "how dedicated you are to make it here after working all day." My mother would just nod and say, "Nothing is more important than my daughter's education," in a voice that left no room for comment. By senior year, I was still at the top of my class, but Parker was just 0.1 percentage points behind me. Madison was Principal Winters' niece. Her family had donated the science wing to the school. The Parkers had a legacy at Jefferson. Madison's father had been valedictorian 25 years earlier. Their name was on plaques and benches all over campus. Madison was smart. I won't take that away from her. But she didn't have to work nights at the local diner like I did to help with household expenses. She had professional tutors for every subject. When she struggled with her AP chemistry project, her father hired a professor from the state university to help her. Still, I stayed ahead. Barely, but ahead. One afternoon in early spring, I was shelving books in the library during my student aid period when I overheard Principal Winters talking to Mr. Grayson, the guidance counselor. "The scholarship committee meeting is next week," she said in a hushed tone. "We need to be strategic about this. Amara Johnson has the highest GPA," Mr. Grayson replied. "It's not even questionable at this point." There was a long pause before Principal Winters spoke again. "GPA isn't everything, James. We need to consider the complete picture. Madison has family legacy, community connections. She's better positioned to represent Jefferson as our valedictorian." "That's not how the criteria can be interpreted," she interrupted. "Madison's father is on the school board. The Parker family has supported this school for generations. They expect their daughter to follow tradition." I stood frozen between the bookshelves, a copy of "Their Eyes Were Watching God" clutched against my chest so tightly my knuckles ached. "And what about Amara?" Mr. Grayson asked, his voice lower now. "She's earned this." Another pause. "She'll be fine. Girls like that are always resilient. She can still go to community college. Maybe she'll get a different scholarship." Girls like that. I didn't tell my parents what I'd heard. What would be the point? It would just confirm what my father had always tried to prepare me for. That excellence wasn't always enough. Instead, I doubled down. I studied harder. I took on extra credit assignments. I raised my GPA by another 0.05 points. The scholarship committee was supposed to meet on a Thursday. By Friday, the results would be submitted to Principal Winters, and the announcement would be made at the senior awards night the following week. That Friday, I waited after school, lingering by Mrs. Peterson's classroom. As head of the scholarship committee, she would know the results. "Amara." She seemed startled to find me at her door. "Did you need something, honey? I was wondering if the scholarship committee made their decision," I said, trying to keep my voice casual. She looked down at her desk, shuffling papers unnecessarily. "Yes, we did." "And?" Mrs. Peterson had always been kind to me. She was the one who'd written my recommendation letter for my college applications, praising my uncommon intellect and extraordinary work ethic. Now she wouldn't meet my eyes. "Principal Winters will make all announcements at the ceremony next week," she said, still not looking up. I took a step into her classroom. "Mrs. Peterson, please. This scholarship means everything to my family." Finally, she looked at me and I could see something like guilt in her eyes. "Amara, I can't. It's not my place to—" "Did I win?" I pressed. She glanced toward the door, then back at me. "You should talk to Principal Winters." But her face had already told me everything I needed to know. I had won, and something was wrong. When I got home that evening, my mother knew immediately that something was bothering me. She had that sixth sense that good mothers have. The ability to read the slightest shift in my mood, the smallest tension in my shoulders. "What is it, baby?" she asked as I picked at my dinner. I told her about overhearing Principal Winters, about my conversation with Mrs. Peterson. With each word, I watched my mother's expression change, hardening into something I rarely saw, pure righteous anger. "So they're trying to cheat you out of what you've earned," she said quietly when I finished. "I don't know for sure." I hedged, suddenly regretting saying anything. The last thing I wanted was for my mother to make a scene. She set down her fork and looked me straight in the eye. Amara, when have I ever taught you to doubt yourself? If you know you won that scholarship, then you won it. And nobody, not Principal Winters, not the Parker family, nobody gets to take that away from you. The next morning, my mother called the school and requested a meeting with Principal Winters. She was told the principal was unavailable until after the awards ceremony. That's convenient, my mother muttered after hanging up the phone. Well, if the mountain won't come to Mohammed. On Monday, my mother showed up at school during my lunch period. She was still in her scrubs. She'd come straight from her shift at the hospital. I saw her in the hallway outside the cafeteria, and my stomach dropped. Mom, what are you doing here? I'm going to speak to Principal Winters, she said, her voice calm but determined. Mom, please don't. Amara. She put her hands on my shoulders. All your life, I've taught you to work hard and be twice as good. Well, you've done that. You've been twice as good, 3 times as good. And now they want to pretend that doesn't matter? No, not today. She strode down the hallway toward the administration offices, her white nursing shoes squeaking slightly on the polished floor. I followed, heart pounding. The school secretary tried to stop us. Mrs. Johnson, you don't have an appointment. But my mother walked right past her, opening Principal Winters' door without knocking. Principal Winters was at her desk, Madison Parker sitting across from her. They both looked up, startled by the interruption. Mrs. Johnson. Principal Winters recovered quickly, standing up. This is highly inappropriate. I'm in a meeting. I've been trying to schedule a meeting with you for days, my mother replied. Seems like you've been avoiding me. I wonder why. Madison glanced between them, then at me hovering in the doorway, confusion evident on her face. Whatever this is about, it can wait, Principal Winters said firmly. No, it can't. My mother closed the door behind her. This is about the Brookhaven Memorial Scholarship, the one my daughter won, but you're planning to give to someone else. Madison's eyes widened. What? Principal Winters' face flushed. Mrs. Johnson, you are making accusations based on absolutely nothing. Am I? My mother reached into her purse and pulled out a folded piece of paper. Because I spoke to Mrs. Peterson this morning. She seemed very troubled about how the scholarship decision was being handled. I hadn't known this. My mother must have gone to the school before her shift started. Mrs. Peterson had no right to discuss committee deliberations with you, Principal Winters said, but I could hear the uncertainty in her voice. She didn't have to tell me much, my mother replied. Just confirmed what Amara already knew, that she won the scholarship fair and square, but somehow her name isn't going to be called at that ceremony. Madison stood up suddenly. I don't understand. I thought you told me the committee was still deliberating. Principal Winters shot her a warning look. Madison, this doesn't concern you. Doesn't it? My mother asked. Because it seems like Madison is being set up here too. She thinks she's still in the running for something that's already been decided. Madison turned to the principal. Is that true? Did Amara win? The silence that followed was answer enough. I think, my mother said into that silence, that we should all attend the scholarship committee meeting this afternoon. I've already spoken to the other members. They've agreed to reconvene at 3 o'clock to discuss this situation. Principal Winters' face went from flushed to pale. You had no right. I had every right. My mother cut her off. As a parent of a student at this school, I have every right to ensure that the processes are fair and transparent. And if they're not, I have every right to demand answers. That afternoon, in a classroom that felt too small for the tension it contained, the scholarship committee met again. My mother and I sat on one side of the room. Principal Winters sat at the teacher's desk in front. Madison and her parents had been invited too. My mother's idea. They sat stiffly on the other side, Mr. Parker's face a mask of barely controlled anger. Mrs. Peterson cleared her throat nervously. As I explained earlier today, the committee voted unanimously to award the Brookhaven Memorial Scholarship to Amara Johnson. Her academic record is unmatched. Her community service hours exceed the requirement by more than 100 hours. And her personal essay was, frankly, one of the most compelling I have read in 20 years of teaching. Mr. Parker leaned forward. Then why were we led to believe Madison was still in contention? All eyes turned to Principal Winters. She straightened her jacket before speaking. The committee's recommendation is just that, a recommendation. The final decision rests with the administration, and in considering all factors, including legacy and community connection, that's not in the scholarship criteria. Mrs. Peterson interrupted, something I'd never seen her do before. The criteria are explicitly academic achievement, community, service, and quality of the personal essay. As principal, I have discretion, not when it comes to changing the recipient of an endowed scholarship, Mrs. Peterson said firmly. The Brookhaven family established this scholarship with specific criteria. We can't change those retroactively just because we prefer a different candidate. I glanced at Madison, expecting to see resentment or anger directed at me. Instead, she looked mortified. I didn't know, she said suddenly, looking at me. Amara, I swear I didn't know they were doing this. I believed her. Madison and I weren't friends. We operated in different circles. But we'd never been enemies either. We were just two girls who both wanted the same thing. Recognition for our hard work. Mr. Parker stood up abruptly. This is ridiculous. The Parker family has supported this school for generations. My great-grandfather helped found it. My father was valedictorian. I was valedictorian. And now you're telling me my daughter. Your daughter, my mother interrupted, calmly, is an excellent student. Second in her class. That's something to be proud of. But she's not first. Amara is. Mrs. Parker, who had been silent until now, touched her husband's arm. Robert, sit down. To the room, she added. Madison would never want to accept an honor she didn't earn. None of us would want that. The look she gave Principal Winters could have frozen water. The meeting ended with a unanimous reaffirmation of the original decision. The Brookhaven Memorial Scholarship would be awarded to me, Amara Johnson, at the senior awards night. As we filed out of the classroom, Madison caught up to me in the hallway. I'm sorry, she said quietly. I really didn't know. It's not your fault, I told her and meant it. She hesitated, then added, You deserved it. You worked harder than anyone. That simple acknowledgement, freely given, meant more than I expected. Senior awards night arrived, and the auditorium was packed. I sat between my parents, my speech tucked into my program, rewritten after everything that had happened. The weight of what had almost happened, what had been prevented, sat heavily on my shoulders. Principal Winters moved through the ceremony efficiently, her voice professional, as she called students up for various awards and scholarships. Madison received the Science Department Award and the Community Leadership Scholarship, both well-deserved. Each time her parents applauded politely, though Mr. Parker's face remained tight. Finally, it was time for the Brookhaven Memorial Scholarship. Principal Winters adjusted her glasses and cleared her throat. The Brookhaven Memorial Scholarship is the most prestigious award offered at Jefferson High School. It recognizes not only academic excellence, but a commitment to community service and personal growth. She paused, and I swear I could feel every eye in the auditorium on me. This year's recipient exemplifies these qualities and more, with the highest GPA in Jefferson's history, over 300 community service hours, and an essay that impressed our entire committee. The Brookhaven Memorial Scholarship goes to Amara Johnson. The applause was thunderous. My father's hand squeezed mine so hard it almost hurt, but I welcomed the pressure. My mother's eyes shone with tears as I stood and made my way to the stage. As Principal Winters handed me the certificate, she leaned in and whispered, "Congratulations, Amara. You earned this." Whether she meant it or was just saving face, I'll never know. But in that moment, it didn't matter. What mattered was that justice had prevailed. Excellence had been recognized. The system had tried to bend. But thanks to my mother, it hadn't broken. My speech was brief. I thanked my parents, my teachers, particularly Mrs. Peterson, and acknowledged my fellow students. I didn't mention the controversy, the meeting, the near miss. There was no need to. Everyone knew. This scholarship represents more than financial assistance, I concluded. It represents the idea that with hard work, determination, and the support of those who believe in us, we can achieve things once thought impossible. It represents hope, not just for me, but for everyone who comes after me. As I looked out at the audience, I caught my mother's eye. She nodded once, pride radiating from her like sunlight. In that moment, I understood that she had taught me something even more valuable than the pursuit of excellence. She had taught me how to stand up for what was rightfully mine, how to demand fairness in an unfair world, how to make myself impossible to ignore. After the ceremony, families mingled in the school lobby. Mrs. Peterson found us and hugged me tightly. "I'm so proud of you," she said, "and I'm sorry I wasn't brave enough to speak up sooner." "You spoke up when it mattered," my mother assured. Her, Mr. Grayson, the guidance counselor, stopped by too. "The university is getting quite the student," he told my parents. "She's going to change things there too. Just wait and see." Even Madison and her mother came over to congratulate me. Mrs. Parker's handshake was firm, her smile genuine. "We're having a small gathering at our house to celebrate Madison's scholarships," she said. "We'd be honored if you and your family would join us." My mother looked surprised but pleased. "Thank you. We'd like that." Mr. Parker stayed by the exit, checking his watch repeatedly. As we were about to leave, Principal Winters approached us one last time. She looked tired, the lines around her eyes deeper than usual. "Mrs. Johnson," she said, addressing my mother directly, "I want you to know that I've learned from this situation. It won't happen again." My mother studied her for a long moment. "Make sure it doesn't, because I won't always be here, but there will always be students like Amara who deserve their chance." Principal Winters nodded once, then walked away. In the car on the way home, I finally asked the question that had been burning in my mind. "Mom, how did you know what to do? How did you know they would listen to you?" She adjusted the rearview mirror, catching my eye in the reflection. "I didn't," she admitted. "I just knew I couldn't let them take what you had earned without a fight. Sometimes, Amara, you have to be willing to make people uncomfortable to get what's right. Your mother's been making people uncomfortable her whole life." my father added with a chuckle. It's one of her best qualities. My mother reached over and swatted his arm playfully. James! What? It's true. Remember when you organized that? Sit in at the hospital to protest their scheduling policy. Or when you confronted that landlord who wouldn't fix the heating in Mrs. Wilkinson's apartment. She smiled a little sadly. I just try to do what's right, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. I went to State University that fall on the Brookhaven Scholarship. I majored in education, with a minor in public policy. I wanted to understand how systems work, how they fail, and how they can be fixed. I wanted to be like my mother, someone who could see injustice and had the courage to stand against it. My photograph joined the line of valedictorians in Jefferson High's main hallway. The first black face in 60 years of history. Not the last, though. The year after me, another black student, Marcus Washington, became valedictorian. Then Zoe, Chen the year after that. Something had shifted. A door had been opened. It's been 15 years since that awards ceremony. I'm now the director of curriculum for our school district, working to make education more equitable and accessible for all students. My office walls are lined with degrees and certifications, but my favorite framed item is a photograph of my mother and me from my college graduation, her face beaming with pride, my future spread out before me like an open road. Last month I was in the grocery store when I saw a familiar face in the cereal aisle, Madison Parker. Now Madison Collins, according to the wedding ring on her finger. She looked thinner than I remembered, tired around the eyes. Amara, she said, surprised. Wow, it's been forever. We chatted briefly about our lives since high school. She had gone to her father's alma mater, gotten a business degree, worked for his company for a while. And now? I asked. A shadow passed over her face. Now I'm between things. The company went under last year. Dad made some bad investments and... She trailed off, then forced a smile. But we're managing. I'm applying for teaching positions, actually. I always loved working with kids. I nodded, thinking of the district's current teacher shortage. We're always looking for good teachers. The pay isn't great starting out, but the benefits are solid. Really? The hope in her voice was unmistakable. I can put your resume at the top of the pile if you'd like. Get you an interview next week. She blinked rapidly, as if fighting back tears. You'd do that? After everything? I thought about how easily our roles could have been reversed. How differently our lives might have gone if my mother hadn't fought for me that day. We were just kids, Madison. And from what I remember, you weren't the one trying to cheat me out of that scholarship. She nodded gratefully. Thank you. That means... just... thank you. As I watched her walk away, I thought about how life has a way of coming full circle sometimes. How the girl who almost got handed what was mine was now in need of a hand herself. I called my mother that evening and told her about running into Madison. And you're helping her get a job? She asked. I am. There was a pause, then a soft chuckle. You know what, Amara? You turned out even better than I hoped. I had a good teacher, I replied. We all face moments in life where we have to decide whether to accept injustice or stand against it. I'm grateful every day that my mother showed me how to do the latter. That when faced with a system trying to erase me, she refused to let me be invisible. So if you're facing your own battle for recognition, for fairness, remember this. Sometimes you have to be willing to make people uncomfortable to get what's right. Be brave enough to speak up. Be strong enough to stand firm. And if you can, Be generous enough to extend a hand later, even to those who once stood in your way. Have you ever had to fight for something you deserved? Or helped someone who once might have been considered your rival? I'd love to hear your story. Share it in the comments, or send this to someone who needs reminding of their own worth and strength. Because in the end, the greatest scholarship we can receive is the knowledge that we are worthy of being seen, heard, and valued, exactly as we're.